Hey everybody, Wayne here. In today's overview and review, we're going to take a look at the White Tribe, Rhodesia, 1966 through 1980. This is designed by Madison and published by White Dog Games. Before I dive in, I do want to thank, first of all, I want to thank White Dog Games for providing me a review copy to show off to you guys. Second, I want to thank all of you, everyone who's been subscribing lately. Subscriber numbers are through the roof. Commenting, I get so many comments on every video. I really appreciate just hearing from you guys. What you think of either maybe a game I am covering, if you've played it, haven't played it, a game that, let me know if you're interested in it, other games maybe I should look at. I mean, if, one person says, hey, check out this game, I don't know if I'll have time to look at it, but this is actually one where I had multiple people comment and even message me saying, hey, you should check out this game. And so I was like, you know what, that must mean I better check it out. So thank you to you guys. So, all right, my videos here, what we're going to have is we're going to have a general overview and my review thoughts in my kind of most recent sort of review format. I'm not going to be able to do a full tutorial in this video. It just would be way too long. There's too much of this game. So we'll do a broad overview. We'll dive into my review, cons, pros, final thoughts. And then I'm going to have a separate, at least partial playthrough. I don't know if I'll have a full playthrough on camera. Game takes a little bit to play through, so it'll at least be a couple turns, several turns, to get you guys really comfortable with the mechanics, how they interact, how things move back and forth. Fair enough? So that said, let's go ahead and dive into the overview of the game itself. All right, so you can see the board state right now. This is the general game board with the turn record track and some other tracks and tables over here. The game is going to be played out on this map here with adjustments and things telling you what to do, policies to enact, etc. Don't worry, I'll explain it over here on the turn record track. As you're playing through and you're conducting all of the, you're going through the sequence of play, conducting the different actions, the different phases, you're going to be referencing not only the chits that are on the board, depending on the turn, depending on your RF popularity, House of Assembly, etc., etc. You're also going to have these charts and tables. You're going to have the Rhodesia Herald, which is basically a series of random events. You have the combat results table there. There's a sequence play in the back of that. And then you're going to have not only some information in the rulebook, but you're going to have charts and tables here and here as well. With these player aids, you should be able to get through everything in the game, everything that you need to. There's some stuff online, but everything that comes with the game does work. There is just some additional content that some fans, which, hey, always appreciated. I'm sure fans have created as well if you want to check that out. Specifically talking about Board Game Geek. So that's where I get most of my additional add-ons for games, things like that. So the game map itself. If you haven't read about this game a whole lot yet, I do have an unboxing where I cover it a little bit in a little bit of detail. I definitely encourage you to read up on this one. Don't rely on just my video or any other videos for this one because it's a sensitive topic, but it is part of history. And as I explained in my recon, my unboxing, I think that it's important that we have these sorts of games that let us learn history. Because I'll be honest, this is not something that I knew a whole lot about. You're talking, 60s, 70s into 1980, a British, initially, right, territory, colonization of Africa, a whole thing that was a huge part of African history and really colonial history and history of the world. But me as an American, I don't know necessarily a whole lot about all of these things. So a game like this is definitely a learning tool for me. So if I pronounce something wrong or I don't quite get a concept correctly, I apologize in advance. I play the game quite a bit now, and I'm trying to teach the game, but at the same time, the history, definitely still, I'm a novice when it comes to the history. I don't know a whole lot, and this is like a stepping stone to learning it, and that's one of the things I love about these types of games. War games, simulation games, whatever you want to call it. So, all right, so you are in this game though. You are playing as Rhodesia. During this civil war between and again, apologies if mispronouncing, the Zapu and Zanu factions. So you have with Rhodesia a white minority, right, ruling over an African majority. And then you have these factions that, whether you call them terrorists, whether you call them something else, that are fighting against those in charge here of Rhodesia. So your job in the game is to basically hold off these terrorist factions. In the game, they're called TERRs. It's TERR, pronounced turs. You're holding off the turs as they are basically spawning in other countries. So you can see, Mozambique, Teat, Zambia, Botswana. They're spawning other countries and moving into Rhodesia. Rhodesia, by the way, becomes Zimbabwe eventually. So your game starts off with Rhodesia. You're trying to hold them off. As time goes by, and we'll cover the turn track and the things over there in a second, you're going to have, you have troops you can send. You have a small air force. And then you have other things you can do. You can hire additional forces. You can pay to, construct protected villages. You can pay to construct sort of fortifications, fences, just things that you're trying to control these rebels, right? Trying to keep them from coming into your country. At the same time, as time goes by, really you cannot escape the fact that the African majority is eventually going to become part of the government. You cannot stay any sort of white rule, right? We're looking at the right side of history, and we're looking at what did happen. Now, in reality, someone who eventually became a horrible dictator took over. In the game, you're trying to establish more of a traditional democracy, right? Power sharing, compromise, things like that. So as you're playing through it, don't get too caught up in kind of, what you're representing. Because actually the goal of the game and the way to win is to actually found a democratic government where both sides are represented. So the ultimate goal of the game is a noble one. Now, is it easy? Is it hard? Well, we'll cover that in a little bit. So, like I said, you see here the map. It is a little busy. This is in the middle of a game. Right now, let me check here. I am in 1976, so you can see I'm in turn 11 of up to 16 here. So quite a ways through in this game. It's busy on the map here, but hopefully, like I said, you guys can see Rhodesia right here, the different other countries around it. Some countries will start, and we've gone past that at this point, but you're going to have countries like Mozambique, Teat, that start in Portuguese control. Botswana has British rule to start back in 1966. So all that stuff intertwines and influences how things will move. So, all right, I think I've covered the basics there. Let's go ahead and take a dive into the actual kind of sequence of play. All right, this is a broad overview of the sequence of play. We are going to do multiple turns on another video to really dive into it. So I'm just going to talk. I'm not actually going to play anything out here, okay? So in a normal turn, you have your turn record track over here. You're looking at the track, so you start off, whatever year it is, and you have your turn track there. There's going to be multiple things in here that are going to matter. You're going to see different flags for nationalities, depending on that, as well as you're going to see things like these policy chits. They're randomly placed, so you never know. Each game you play, they're going to be different order. They're somewhat in order for the years, otherwise it would make sense to have them completely out of order because they are dated. You can see a year on there. But they are mixed up a little bit, so it never plays out exactly the same. What you're going to do as part of the sequence of play, you start off, it's called the Rhodesia Herald phase. Really what that is that's random events. So you have a series of random events here. You have a roll. You're going to make a die roll and check the turn number. As it's whatever number you come up with, you're going to act out those random events. But how the game works is that, as you can see, it's a die roll plus turn number. So these random events up here are only going to occur early in the game, 2 or 3. Because once you get to turn 2 and 3, you can't roll, you add an additional +1 from rolling a d6. I don't think, or did it disappear? Where my d6s go? Over here. So, game uses a d6 for rolling, just to be clear here. So, eventually, as turns go by, you're going to end up ramping up. So the game controls kind of, within a random series of randomness, almost like a bracket of these are the random events you're going to have. And then as the game moves on, it's going to move down and down into different random events that happen. So those are always changing. So you roll, you do each one, move on to the next phase. Next phase is politics. That's where you're going to look at when you're on your turn track here. You have like the different flags, whether you have a flag for South Africa, flag for United States, or you may have something like the British election counter, Rhodesia elections, and then there'll be a couple small things you'll check with Portuguese rule. If Botswana is still controlled by the British, they may that control will collapse eventually, and it's guaranteed. It has a chance to at the beginning, and then that chance increases until it's guaranteed. So you're working through kind of the politics, setting up the board, seeing who's in control, certain elections. When it comes to that, you also notice right here, you have the UK government, USA government, South African government. So depending on which way the chit is facing, it'll be, say, for the Americans, because the majority of my viewers are American, not all. Appreciate everyone, but the majority are. So let's look at the Americans. You have the Democrats, anti, basically meaning they don't support you at all. If it's flipped over, if the Republicans win, they're pro, so you actually get additional money from them. Don't worry, we'll cover the money here in a second. But you can see you actually get money from them versus like the Democrats, you don't get any money. Same thing with the British, Labour, nothing. Tories, you get some support. South Africans have their red and their green as well. That's kind of tied in with the politics phase here. So because we're looking at it, I'll just cover it right now. You see this terror level here? Actually, you know what? Let's cover it in a second once I get to that part, okay, guys? So that's the politics phase. So let's jump into the commercial phase. You're going to earn income. Every turn, your income is going to be different. Let me pull up a little track just to make it a little easier on me and on you guys. So you have this income schedule here. It's actually pretty simple. What you're doing, because you have your money you're going to have to earn and then spend each turn, is you look at these. Remember when I showed you the Democrats and I showed you Republicans and how the Republicans have the $2 symbol in a black box? That would mean you would earn $2. So what you do is you're looking over the map, and every time you see a black box with a number in there, $1, South Africa, you always get $3. Here, Republicans, $2 from the U.S., $2 from South Africa. You add that up along with wherever your population marker is, because you actually have your population marker over here on the turn track. You can see if you can see it, you may not be able to, but that's okay. It lists the population. It moves up and down depending on, certain random events and actions that are happening. It tells you there's a little black box with a number. You may or may not get money from that. And then as well as global trade, if there's no sanctions, you get $4. You have UN sanctions, and you have, if Jimmy Carter's president, you get nothing. So all those, you add that up. That's the commercial phase. You earn your income to start with. Now you start spending it. There's a million things to spend it on. I mean, you can do different things. First of all, you can do sanction busting, which is basically you're investing some of the money and you're making a random roll to hopefully get more money. You're going to check for morale in your different provinces. Basically, you're checking to see if there's terrorists there, the TERS. You're checking for, you may be able to earn more money from Zambia up here if the port is in play, the port of Beira. If the Tanzam Railway is in play, you can't. You can spend money for public spending, which increases RF popularity. $4 you can spend to flip the population marker. It's either going to be red down or green facing up. This has to do with certain events. You can, your Air Force, spend money on your Air Force to either rebuild it, refuel it, put it back into the base so it can be used during the Chimaranga phase, which we'll cover later. Then collaboration, you can pay to basically buy off the different politicians here. You can see the different African politicians. On the other side, you can see a dollar figure and a die roll. You spend that much, you roll against that die, try to win them over to your side. Basically, you put them in the internal settlement collaborators box, which will help you out later in the game. So that's basically the commercial phase. Again, I know I'm not covering everything in detail, but there's just so much of the game I really can't. So let's move on to the policy review phase. What you do is over on the turn track. Remember I showed you guys these policies? So things like the policy chits, Land Tenure Act, or Corsan. What you have is you have these policies. And when they come up, generally there's going to be a price to pay them or a price to not pay them. It's called either the action price or inaction price. So are you going to enact the policy or are you going to ignore it? Now, depending on the policy, and they're all extremely different, and the rule book covers all of them very well. It's going to be, so the policy chits here, and you can have each of them, and they're organized by year here. And it's going to tell you exactly what happens if you don't do anything, what happens if you do, and then there's a little bit of history with each one that explains kind of what is Spirit Medium's policy, what's the Pierce Commission policy. If you don't know that history, it explains it as well. Every turn you're making those choices, right? And generally it's give and take, right? Like you are paying for something, you're gaining something, but you're giving something up. It's usually not all good or all bad. Again, a lot of times you can ignore them, but there may be penalties for ignoring it, right? It's called the inaction penalty. So maybe if there's a policy that would be super popular with the majority of the people, you don't enact it, you're going to suffer because of that. So it is a whole system tied into the voting. If you see the House of Assembly here, you're actually rolling depending on the policy. It's going to be either a conservative or liberal policy. The liberal is the triangle here, conservative is a square, and you can see the numbers here. Actually, it's the other way around. So anyway, no, it is that way. My bad. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. I'm psyching myself out, guys. Trust me. Trust my first instinct, I guess, right? You're rolling against here. If you succeed, if you roll under the number, boom, you can go ahead and enact the policy. If you fail, you actually have to go ahead and roll an election, have an election here, and you can see what happens. Good, bad, just depends. You're gonna have to spend money on the election. It's a whole subplot of the game, not subplot, sub mechanism of the game built into these policies. So it's not as simple as, let me read about this one. Oh yeah, I like that. Let's go ahead and enact it. No, you're gonna have to make some rolls, maybe spend some money, grease some wheels, and hopefully, a lot of them will have die rolls saying, say it's increased popularity, and maybe it's 1d6. You only roll a 1, or you may roll a 5, 6, something like that. So, all right, that is the policy review phase. Now let's go to the Chimarenga phase. That is really tied into the combat of the game. That's when I talked about, you having forces, you having the terrorists, right? And they call your guys troopies. So instead of troops, or they call them troopies, which is a really cool name, I guess. Basically pretty simple, but your troops or troopies get deployed from Salisbury, and depending on what's going on in your different provinces and in the other countries, you may or may not be able to deploy them. There's multiple steps here. There may be, if it's has a circle around the strength, it can be deployed to another country. If it has a square, it can't be. In addition, if you look at your different provinces, you have these fists or a handshake. Everything starts off with a handshake, means your citizens are cooperating with the police, the authorities. If you have a fist, you have basically people are upset, they're not cooperating with the government. You get your troops from the force pool. You pay for them. Start in Salisbury. You can go ahead and send them around. Well, actually, if you pay for them, technically you can put them wherever, deploy them immediately. But say it's another turn, you have troops in Salisbury, you paid to deploy them, you put them where maybe you think you'll need them, or maybe if you already have TERS, the terrorists there, you're going to go ahead and fight. Again, I'm not going to dive into the combat. We're going to go ahead and do that in another video. But there's multiple layers of, are they taken care of by foreign armies out here in the other countries? If they're not, they're going to go ahead and start moving. So you can see, the Zanu, the Zapu, they're going to go ahead and start moving into Rhodesia. They may be dealt with by the citizens themselves during this phase. If you have the fist, trust me, they're not going to be, because no one's cooperating. They support the terrorists, really. So then you're going to end up fighting them. You may or may not defeat them. With their goals, they're trying to move to the Midlands. As this is happening, and this is where I talked about this earlier, but I'm going to explain it now. The terror track here, the terror level, goes up. Now, during this Chimarenga phase, after you do all your troops, then the terrorists spawn. So you kind of have to predict where they're going to be, or hope where they're going to be. You don't get to react to them until later on. You maybe get to do one reaction involving your Air Force. Speaking of which, during regular combat, your Air Force can be sent to an area to support the combats in that area, that province. But the terror level here, whatever number that is, and obviously higher is bad for you, whatever number that is, that's an additional D6 you're going to roll to determine units. The terrorist units, the TERS. Now, it doesn't mean, 1d6 roll sticks at 6 of them, whatever, there'd be way too many. What it is for every die, that's one TER, and when you roll it, see the black numbers, that's going to be where they appear. And then if they're in that level, if they're in that area, they're going to move. They'll roll the 1d6 to see, hey, does he move into this province, or this province? There's more to it, but again, I don't want to cover everything. I just want to give you guys a general idea how it works, right? So hopefully that makes sense. You're spawning your troopies. You have to pay money for them, right? Pay money to get them out of the force pool. Once you have them, you're good, but you just pay money to deploy them, unless they're in a province with a handshake, because then it's more peaceful, they're supported. They're going to be in that province. Terrorists may or may not move into it, the TERS, unless, they may get stopped by foreign armies or foreign insurgents in that country. But if they're not, they're going to continue on. They're going to move into one of your provinces. And you may or may not be taken out by the handshake marker. If it's there, they may not be taken out by your armies. And if they aren't, it's going to hurt you big time. So that's the Chimarenga phase. Let's go on to the cosmopolitics phase. This is the sort of the last stuff, it's a little bit of the bigger stuff, the stuff that really affects what's happening on the board. First off, U.S. elections, if it's on the turn track. So I know there was a politics phase, which every other election, but the U.S. elections are saved for the cosmopolitics phase. Then you do terrorism intimidation, which is if you have those TERs that are still in your provinces, right? So say your troops, at this point, they wouldn't say use any, or they would say use because they would have fought them already. But say like here, no troopies, nothing. This terrorist here, he's been able to move in. He's going to go ahead and hurt you, right? Basically, so he'll flip the handshake marker to the fist if it wasn't. So again, handshake is good for you. Fist, not so good. He'd flip that to a fist. He may move to the Midlands, try to move to Midlands, which is the center province. And if he does, he's going to go ahead and raise the terror level when he disappears. All bad for you. Trust me, you want to try to eliminate the TERs as early as you can. So, all right, now you can create protected villages if you've enacted the policy. You can see these protected village symbols here, which basically allows you, when you have, let's say it turned into a fist, you can go ahead and spend money. It switches back over to a handshake, but then if it becomes a fist again, it stays that way the rest of the game. There's no way to bring it back. Construct corsans, which is the fences and barriers. Again, that's another policy you've had to have enacted. You can't just do it on your own. Pay for African training, same thing. If you have the African advancement policy enacted, that's what you do then. The last thing of a turn is the activate Zimbabwe Rhodesia. That's if the deadline marker is over here, is on the turn track, which that's towards the end of the game. You can see the Quinnet Commission here, 1977. Policy deadline to majority rule. And this is one of those ones where, you don't have to enact it right away. You can leave it. There's no inaction penalty. But eventually, you're going to have to, or else you're automatically going to lose the game at the end if you don't enact the majority rule. So there's a whole process for that. Checking, you're holding an election, you're checking your number of collaborators, et cetera, et cetera. Basically seeing if you're able to establish a government that works. If not, your government collapses, the opposition takes over, and it's game over for you. So in a nutshell, I know there was a lot there, and I still wasn't able to cover everything for sure. But in a nutshell, that is the game. That is an average turn of the White Tribe, Rhodesia, 1966 or 1980. Sorry, I had to check the box for a second. I'm exhausted after explaining all that. So that's one reason I was like, hey guys, I have to do a separate video with the actual turns, because there's no way I can play through it and make this video any shorter than it's, than I would want. So, all right. So I think we covered the turn. Well, let's go ahead and we'll move on to my review, right? So my cons first, my pros, and then we'll do my final thoughts. All right, time for the review itself. So, I've kind of covered the game quite a bit. You guys should have a pretty good idea how it plays. Some cons, right? It's how my usual start off with the cons. Start off with things that are like, could have been a little better. Could have been something maybe could have been refined before release. Whatever. First con, the player aids. They work, but they don't work great. So, in addition to that, well, let's just say the player aid. We'll start with the player aids. So, the player aids that come with the game, you have the detailed sequence play, but it kind of is a little iffy. This cost chart here. You have the Rhodesia Herald. That's fine. It lists the random events and the common results. This is probably the best one right here. Because you're going to roll. You're going to look. Okay, no problem there. The charts and tables here. It's all right. It's there. You have the charts here. But problem is there's still like stuff in the book. So it's got lots of information on there, but there's still stuff that's in the rule book they're going to have to look up. So I think that they could have done a better job with the player aids. Either maybe, like I said, some of them are good, the Rhodesia Herald and common results table, but maybe something with the charts and tables. Maybe could have been done a little bit more organized, taking a little bit more of the things out of the rule book, put it into here. Whether I don't know. I'm not, I don't do the design on these. Fortunately for you guys, I don't, because I have no idea how to do it. But I feel like it could have been maybe improved a little bit just to increase the efficiency of playing the game. And kind of tied into that is the graphic design. Really doesn't catch your eye. Two things. Obviously, it doesn't catch your eye. I don't think. Most people probably wouldn't say. It's functional, not pretty, right? So, it works. You have the tracks. You have the provinces. You have a turn record track, House of Assembly, RF popularity, ZR, election. it's all here, but it just doesn't really look that great, right? No one's going to look at this and go, whoa, what's that game? They may go, hey, what's that game? Because they can't figure it out because it's just a little hard to read it. Same thing when you start, it seems a little overwhelming. Having the turn record track double as a track for basically everything, almost everything. I shouldn't say that because, like I said, the terror level's over here at least. But this struggles a little bit. It can get a little crowded. I know right now it's a little spread out, but like when you have multiple markers on there, they're stacked on top of each other. You're gonna be manipulating them a little bit, moving your money marker around, trying not to knock over the small stacks. Not the end of the world, absolutely. But it's just something to be aware of. You're not gonna look at this game. You're not gonna sit up and go, wow, what a beaut, right? You're gonna look at it and go, uh-oh, I hope I can learn this. But you will be able to learn it. Trust me. It's just going to take a turn or two to kind of get down the flow of it and how it all looks together. So, okay, I think that really does it for my cons. Like, not a bunch of stuff, just a couple things, mainly related to the graphical design and the functionality and efficiency of the game itself. So, let's dive into the pros. Replayability is very high. So you have so many different things that can happen. With that Rhodesia Herald, which is the random events, right? The random events are just every turn you don't know what's going to happen. Yes, they're within a certain range maybe, but you still don't know exactly what's going to happen. I went through that whole sequence of play, right? You saw like there's a million things that are conducted, a million actions, a million phases, not a million. I used that word before, and it's got me in trouble. So let's pause, rewind. Let's take back that word million. Because I don't mean it in a negative. I actually mean it in a positive in this sense. In this game is the fact that because there are all these different phases and there's all these different things happening, and most of them are basically randomized. Now, a lot of them you have a hand in it. You may be able to spend money. Maybe it's something you did the previous turn, kind of setting up for it, hoping for it, whatever. But the key is, as things are happening, you don't know exactly what's happening, right? It's not, when it says, South African elections, well, you don't know who's going to win. When it says British elections, you don't know who's going to win. When it comes to money, yeah, at that point you know, but at the same time, the previous turn you've kind of set up, and based on the elections, it maybe has set up your money. You're not guaranteed at the beginning of your turn how much money you're going to get, because elections could turn these chits, right? Could flip them. So suddenly, instead of getting $4 from the governments, maybe now you're getting none from them. You're only getting it from South Africa, your population, and a couple people on board. You never know. So, replayability, turn record track as well with the the policy chits. How they get kind of mixed up a little bit. They're within a couple years, I think, a few years. I can't remember exactly the setup rules, but there's going to be some variability in what's happening each turn. So you never know exactly what policies are going to be available for you. And how you're going to enact them is also going to change because you may be successful right away. You may not. You may have to hold an election then. Again, it's all going to make that replayability level high because the turns are not going to play out. It's not a hex encounter game of every time I move this here because I know that works best from the opening setup. Trust me, you don't know what's going to happen in the opening setup. Could be con, I guess, for some people. For me, it's a big plus. That's tied into my second pro, which is it's a sandbox feel. You really have a sandbox feel with this game. So, you're running through that sequence of play, you're making your choices, and some you're just rolling and you're randomly determining. Fair enough. But there's going to be a lot of things you get to choose. It may be small choices or fairly small, but they all add up, right? How are you spending money on this? Are you saving money on that? Are you enacting a certain policy? You're not enacting the policy. Are you recruiting more armies? Are you sending your armies into other countries? There's a risk that there's going to be an outrage and the foreign governments are going to hate you because of that. They're like, hey, send your troops home, right? Troopies. Great name. So maybe you'll just keep your troopies in Rhodesia. Well, then you may see the Zapu Zanu building up in the foreign countries, before they can stream into your country. So you never know. It's all just based on what you want to do. Great sandbox feel in that aspect of it. As well, sandbox feels great. Now the history. So my last pro I think I want to talk about here is, actually I think maybe one more too, is the history. I love the history in the game. I mentioned this before, clearly it's a sensitive topic, right? Sensitive part of history. But the fact that you're able to help learn something like this and learn of what happened, and yeah, you're building your own story, but in the process of doing that, you're learning what really happened. And because it's not just tied into the chits you're pushing around here. Allow me to get out the rulebook here. and show you. So Robin Madison does a great job. So at the beginning here, he's really kind of doing, a page explaining kind of the setup for the game. This first page is really just a setup for the game, setup for kind of what's going on. History, right? Not just the game, like the gameplay, set this chit here, move it there, whatever. No, the history of what really happened. And then, and this is great. I love this. I love it so much. So, you have the random events, which, they'll explain kind of what happens, and you get a little bit of history in there. But what I love is throughout the whole rulebook, see the passages in green? Those paragraphs in green? Those are all bits of history. For instance, you can see here, when it talks to the Kissinger, and the unit is on the map. Well, then it starts going in and says, U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who served Republican Presidents Nixon and Ford, worked with South Africa to move Rhodesia along diplomatically. He helped get black and white leaders talking to each other, which led in time to creation of the biracial Zimbabwe-Rhodesia government. Like a bit of history. I didn't know that. Some may know a lot about this history. I didn't. So you see these green boxes all over the place. So you have the rules, explains it well, and then you have a green box of history. You can ignore it, or, like me, you can read it and learn something. In addition, all the policy chits, I explained this before, as you see the policy chit, you can see the mechanics of what happens, right? There's usually like a couple sentences. Okay, this happens, this happens, this happens. But look at this italicized. Boom, boom, boom. Like, this is a whole bunch of history. Again, it explains exactly what that chit is representing. So even though all you have is this one little policy. You go in here, you have the game effects, but you can also read of what that policy was, what that was actually doing in history. And then to end it, there's a good designer's notes. It's tiny little text, but I can read it. Hopefully you can read it. The designer notes are very good. Basically, it's page and a half, page and 2/3. Go ahead and read that as well. Set yourself up. Read it before, read it in the middle of a game, whatever. You're going to love it. So, I think I covered enough on my pros and cons there. Let's go ahead and dive into my final thoughts. All right, guys, final thoughts. I definitely love this game. I think you probably got that impression, right? I always save my final thoughts at the end. Do I like it? Not. Clearly I like it, right? I mean, you can tell probably from my explanation, a little bit of passion for it. And I'll be honest, this is one that when I first heard about it and I saw somebody was like, hey, you should check this game out. I looked at it and went, well, it just didn't draw me. And maybe that's tied into when one of my cons, which was the graphic design, right? It didn't draw me in. I didn't look at this box cover and go, yeah, that's a game I need to play. You know what I mean? It just didn't catch me. And maybe you're different, and that's fair, very fair. But for me, it didn't. But when I had multiple people say, you should check this game out. If you liked Robin Madison design, solitaire designs, look into this one. I'm glad I did, because this one should be part of, I don't want to say everyone's collection, because if you're not comfortable with it, you're not comfortable with kind of what it represents, that's fine. You don't have to play the game, you don't have to own the game. But the fact that you're experiencing and learning history, I know I've used that word a lot, but historical simulation style, right? You're learning, experiencing things, you're kind of seeing just a bit of that, and something that you may or may not know a lot about or anything about, like me, right? I know pretty much nothing about it. I've learned already a ton. I've been reading some more. I plan to read more. I got a book on order. I just want to learn more about this, learn more about what happened, and good, bad. That's like all war games we cover, right? There's generally a horrible side. It's war, right? I mean, war is horrible. But these games are giving us a look into these events that have happened, and this one is not a granular war game of troops marching against each other. There's combat involved, but really it's sort of a war game that's more of a true like conflict simulation, as in political war, money, people, policies, politics, everything mixed up together, guiding this country towards a future that may be good, maybe bad. In history, you can argue whatever. Looked pretty bad to me from what I've seen, unfortunately. But in this game, you have to go ahead and maybe change the course of things for yourself. So, big recommendation from me. If you like solitaire war games, if you like any of Robin Madison's other designs, definitely check this one out. Don't let the iffy cover, scare you off like it did to me. Read some about this game, watch some other reviews, watch some other playthroughs. I'm gonna have a couple turn playthrough up soon, hopefully. Check out the game for yourself, and most importantly, let me know what you think below. So, you know the deal. If you're not subscribed, if you made it this far, come on, just subscribe. No big deal. Give me a thumbs up, give me a like on the video. Really appreciate that. Helps share the video. I have a Patreon you can subscribe to if you want to donate to the channel, help me get more games. Trust me, there's not a whole lot of games I get for free. I get some games for free for review copies, but there's plenty that I have to buy myself. So every bit helps, plus equipment, everything like that, everything I can, lights, things to make the game, make everything better, the presentation better. Comment below. Let me know if you played this one. If you haven't, if this video has convinced you, you know what, I'm gonna give this a look, give it a check it out. I ordered already. Please let me know. I sure would appreciate it. So, till next time, guys. Later.